Welcome everyone, this is Tactical Lich here, and today we have the very first Domination mode army build for Total War Warhammer 3 featuring Khornate Doggos. And this build, I would have to say, is outright oppressive and broken and OP against lower factions. The reason is that in the game mode of Domination, speed is king, and the faster mobility faction can always control the flow of battle, dominate the map control, and basically pick off reinforcements and isolated units of the slower factions. And this is exactly what we're going to do today with the Fleshhounds of Khorne, supported by Chaos Furies, and two rather broken characters as well, the Cultists of Khorne with their Bloodletter summon. Bloodletters, 800 gold demons, really good at dealing damage, will do massive pain in their short lifespan to their enemy. And with the leadership, we have Herald of Khorne, and that's basically it for our army build. Our opponent today is Nurgle, which is one of the perfect examples to showcase how speed dominates this game. Nurgle, with one of the worst mobility in the game, simply cannot keep up with their enemy and slowly gets picked apart. Now for the Nurgle army, we have a bunch of Nurglings as the front line. A couple Plague Bearers, one of them the Exalted variant, at the back supporting, and also Kugath Plague Father, no doubt trying to push for the middle objective, obtain control in there, and support with the artillery and missile fire from the Exalted Plague Bearer. And after that, probably try to contest the other minor objectives with their mobility like Plague Toads and whatnot. But unfortunately, with our mobility game here, full Doggo spam and Chaos Furies, we're not going to give them the chance. Now let's get the battle started, and using this battle as an example, I will showcase why the balancing in Domination mode is absolutely broken, and slower factions simply can't contest with faster factions. With the battle started, my opponent obviously trying to push for the middle objective, and I'm not gonna really care about it right now. Chaos Fury is being summoned into the material realm, trying to scout out my Fleshhounds in the forest, but my Khorne Furies will be countering them. And Khornate Furies absolutely beats Nurgle Furies in melee combat. My opponent was probably trying to pull back his own Furies while using the Kugath's missile attacks as well as the Exalted Plague Bearers as anti-air fire, but they're just not doing much damage. Not landing those Nurgle Furies into the protection of the Nurgle infantry is definitely a big mistake, essentially wasting a bunch of ammo while giving my Khornate Furies some free damage on his Nurgle Furies. And the whole time I'm just biding my time here, like I'm not really fussed to capture the middle objective as we have plenty of time to spare, just to slowly pick off our opponent, getting the right engagements, steamroll our opponent with the accumulation of damage value. Also, if my opponent takes a lead in capture points, well, it works even more in my favor as I will be having more resources with the comeback mechanic, summoning even more army. Anyway, some of the Nurgle Furies caught my Khornate Furies, so I'll be sending in more Khornate Furies, wiping out their forces in hand-to-hand combat. And now I basically exchanged 2 Furies at the cost of 1. Anyways, Rotflies might be an issue here. I don't really want to take the engagement just yet, so I'll be quickly landing the Chaos Furies of Khorne while my Fleshhounds are rushing in for support. And Rotflies not really wanting to hit the Khorne Furies just yet, as they will not be able to get back into the skies after the Fleshhounds get onto them. But the problem is, now my Khorne Furies can charge the Rotflies in combat, and Rotflies doesn't have the best melee stats. They do have some of that melee defense buff in melee, but the problem is, they do not have the healing as they're so far from their Kugath Plague Father. Outnumbered and surrounded, and now you can see that Rotflies being destroyed by 2 Furies in combat. They're not doing much damage in return either. Absolutely a waste of resources, unfortunate, but once you get your units isolated against a more mobile faction, this is bound to happen. And Nurgle is one of the worst victims of this problem, with their almost non-existent mobility. Anyways, we have some Plague Toads summoned into the material realm yet again, but the problem is, with my free Fleshhounds, they'll just get swarmed and overwhelmed in combat. Even with the support of Chaos Furies, they're not going to win this fight. And with that, my opponent's mobility are basically completely gone right now, and I'll be dominating this mobility game. This allows me to slowly occupy this whole reinforcement zone. This whole zone, yep, that's mine for now. And any reinforcing units who got summoned into the world will be quickly picked off, as my units can basically recharge, flank charge, cycle charge them to death, while the Nurgle army will be occupying this zone, being pressured by my Bloodletter's infantry, unable to get out of the fight just yet because they will be losing this objective and bottled in this whole spot without any objectives in their hands. So they are forced to contest this zone while my Khornate Doggos and Furies are just running around happily camping this spawn point. Now we have even more Chaos Warhounds, more mobility summoned into the fray, and the Chaos Cultists trying to sneaky cap this little objective 1 here. Right now, unfortunately, being targeted by a Bloodthirster who I saved up enough funds to finally bring into the battlefield. Though of course my opponent, who has also been saving up their resources, are now bringing in their own greater demon, the disgustingly majestic Great Unclean One. But the problem is, all my mobility are here. This meaty character means nothing against the mobility snipe. We have 3 characters, double cultists, a Herald of Khorne also having that fire damage, Locust of Wrath, cutting off the healing, buffing up the attack of the Flash Hounds and characters, and you can see the Great Unclean One is just quickly dropping, already crumbling. All the HP just get burnt through in a matter of seconds, and sadly the Nurgle forces cannot do a thing about it, as all these Nurgle forces are being pressured by Bloodletters, being bogged down in this fight, and the Bloodthirster is just flying around trying to pick up engagements that is valuable to them. Now, Plague Bearers of Nurgle, these are the summoned ones, so they won't be able to capture anything. So I'll just be ignoring them, pushing my Chaos Warhounds and Furies all the way to the reinforcement zone of my opponent. Back to the middle, Nurgle is still grinding strong. They still have the numbers advantage in the middle objective. Kugath Plaguefather is still stomping all my Bloodletters in combat, but the Bloodthirster is now getting his share of battle. Though Kugath is a meaty boy, with 15k HP, he can tank out for quite a while. But this doesn't matter, as he is not mobile, he can't really contest other objectives other than objective 2, and I have control of both objectives at this point, despite being behind on victory tickets. With the comeback mechanic, I'm getting extra supplies, 3 extra supplies right now. I'm getting even more reinforcements on top of the cost-effective trade, snowballing my army. For a last-ditch attempt to support the fight in the middle, my opponent summoned in some Exalted Plague Bearers and also Nurglings, foot slogging straight for the middle objective, legging it, but unfortunately I will be pinning them down with the OP unit of Bloodletter summons, a 200 gold ability summoning in an 800 gold unit, who are really cost-effective damage dealers, slicing and dicing their way through all these Exalted Plague Bearers, not even giving them the chance to throw out the Death Head. Now with the character support and some more Flash Hounds charging into the rear of the Exalted Plague Bearers, you can see how this mobility gunning dropped them down quickly with the rear charge and the infantry attacks. All this value 1100 gold value wasted just because I pinned them down with the Bloodletters of Khorne, the summon, that is just a 200 gold ability. Now we have the Chaos Warhounds rushing in, these Nurglings hoping to get into the middle fight. Unfortunately, nope. The Khorne Dogs are just there to deny them, and with the rear charges and surround, the Nurglings are just getting destroyed in combat as well. And now my opponent really have nothing to come back into the game right now. The Chaos Furies of Nurgle dropping onto some Khorne Flash Hounds, but unfortunately they will still be taking massive damage, and I'll be able to pick them off with my own Furies at some point. Not now, but definitely eventually. At this point, I have the luxury to summon in some slower infantry like the Khorne Halberd. The Plaguefather did some nice damage with the Plague Boil and the Breath attack, but unfortunately, that is not enough to wipe out the unit, and they will be summoned up into the front line, using their anti-large armor-piercing attacks to slowly grind down Plaguefather. While the other Flash Hounds and whatnot are just cycle-charging, rear-charging these Exalted Plague Bearers who have been tanking for absolute ages, but unfortunately, they'll still be slowly going down as all the reinforcements from our opponent are basically cut off by my mobility, while my own units, well, they are just constantly streaming in infinite reinforcements, basically grinding through the tankiness of the Plague Bearers and whatnot. And yeah, now with my opponent summoning some Rot Flies trying to contest the air game, my Chaos Furies will simply drops down onto the ground and luring them down into melee combat. And with my Hounds so close by, they are not going back into the skies at all. To reinforce this fight, we have more Furies dropping in. Khornate Doggos are also here. Nurgle Warhounds and also Flesh Hounds are bounding onto the Rot Flies, pinning them down in melee combat. The Plague Drones are dishing out some damage with the Death Head, but that is not going to be enough damage to turn the tide, while me myself have been summoning in more Furies. The Bloodthirster is moving out from Objective 1. He has been chilling over there for basically half the game, and now rushing over to get some action. And at the very back, I summon in some elite Blood Crushers, who are just going to footslog all the way down to the reinforcement point of my opponent, who has been bottled up in this zone for the whole time, unable to get any units out of the reinforcement zone. And now with all these units just basically surrounding the Plague Drones, Plague Bearers in combat, my opponent simply do not have any way to support the fight in the middle. The Cultists of Khorne and the Chaos Warriors of Khornate Halberds will slowly grind down Plague Father, while in the middle we have the Fleshhounds, Warhounds surrounding the Plague Bearers and the Rot Flies, even the Furies here noticing that the Forsaken and Nurgle being summoned in will quickly drop in to pin them down, allowing my Bloodletters to rush over and pin them down in combat and cut them down, while the Blood Crushers, noticing these sweet armored infantry, would quickly bound over as well, charge in, devastate them in combat. And for the whole time, my second Cultist of Khorne is now rushing over, hoping to drop in one final summon to use up that ability as well. Since the game is almost at its end, I have triple cap, and the Nurgle army simply do not have any means to contest any objectives. Kugath Plaguefather, now on his last legs, will be slowly grind down by the Halberds as well as the Cultists, while in the back, the reinforcement point, finally the Bloodletters of Khorne summons into the realm, while the Blood Crushers charging in. Well, these Forsaken are absolutely destroyed in combat, quickly routed, and Plague Drones slowly grind down by a combination of Hounds, Khorne Dogs, and also we have the Bloodthirster, the Herald of Khorne. So let's fast forward here as we are triple capping to victory. Kugath is dead, Chaos Furies are picked off, all the infantry are routed by my own infantry forces and the mobility. And to sum up the whole situation, right now in Domination, spawn camping is a very powerful strategy against any slower factions, and any fast factions, say Slaanesh and Khorne, can actually perform that quite well. And especially Slaanesh, who is even faster than Khorne, having even better mobility than the Fleshhounds, they will dominate the meta. Now with this Khorne Dog build, I was able to consistently beat Nurgle, beat Cathay and even Kislev, despite Kislev having quite a bit of mobility. I struggled a bit against teams with their magic firepower and also the Forsaken and whatnot, but in the end I still managed to beat it by switching up the build a bit. The only two factions that the Khorne Doggo spawn camping build can't beat are Slaanesh, who outperforms Khorne in the speed department, and Ogres, who have right now one of the most OP units in the whole game, the Iron Blasters and Gorger Spams. So overall, I think the mobility cheese will be a massive problem in terms of game balancing. And the only means to beat it is to bring out even better mobility cheese or just simply OP units. And if this is what the meta ends up with, basically both armies trying to play chicken with each other with the mobility and try to spawn camp, I think this is not really a good thing for the Domination mode. The best example is the Nurgle game I just showcased, and also this second Nurgle replay. In this second replay, my opponent did a much better job with countering my mobility, spawning a bunch of Plague Toads, did some major damage to my Khorne Dogs. But that doesn't stop me from abusing my mobility, ignoring his major forces who is sitting in Objective 2, while my Khorne Dogs and Khorne Furies are roaming around the battlefield, pinning down all his mobility and picking them off one by one, getting a very cost-effective trade overall. Now, it might be fun to divide and conquer your opponent's forces, but the problem is, this is a very terrible way to lose too, possibly worse than corner camp. At least against corner camping, you can still figure out different ways to rush your opponent, trying to punch through their boxes and whatnot. But against these kind of mobility spam, your fate is sealed the moment you chose Nurgle as a faction. And the worst thing is, you can't do a damn thing about it. Your opponent can simply avoid all main forces of your army, pick off the stray units you sent out to capture secondary objectives, just like what I did in this second replay, or simply spawn camp your army, cut off all your reinforcements to your main army, like the first replay. And Nurgle without any good offensive cavalry simply cannot counter this kind of strategy. Now, I don't think that this is a problem with domination mode with the objective capturing part, but the problem lies in reinforcement pools. Having such a small starting army and relying so much on trickling in reinforcement troops enables an easy opportunity for players to abuse this reinforcement mechanic on top of the already broken comeback mechanic. And this is not only a Nurgle problem. Ranged factions like Cathay and Kislev, they both suffer similar issues, just that the symptoms that manifest is slightly different. And I will talk about them in a second army build video, so remember to hit the like and subscribe, and keep an eye out on my future video uploads. For now, that's going to be all for today, and if you agree with what I said in the video, please hit the like, share it, or do whatever you can to raise CA's attention on this balancing issue in domination mode. Domination is not ready for competitive just yet. This is an issue that needs to be addressed, or else you'll see speed factions like Wood Elves, Beastmen, Bretonnia dominating the whole competitive scene. While players new to multiplayer who just switched over from single player land battles will suffer massively, as their experience in single player campaigns does not apply in domination mode at all, turning spawn camping into yet another problem on ranked ladder, just like corner camping and draw kiting. I'll talk about it more in the next army build video, and that is all for now. I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Lich, signing out.